to A New Lens. I'm your host, Wild Will. In today's book club, we're going to be talking about a pretty old but interesting book, uh, which stays pretty relevant to this day, under certain conditions. That book being How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I just finished this book. It was pretty good. I definitely like a lot of it. Most of what it has to say is a really good perspective on leadership and definitely can guide you in a certain direction, um, a certain positive direction as far as developing your leadership style and how you interact with other people. Not just like, let's say, your normal daily interactions, but including that, right? Where it's like your successes throughout life are just going to increase, is what Dale proposes in this book. So, to start, it's like the overarching concept and what he tries to sell you on is the fact that pretty much the main thing that everybody wants to feel is important. And if you can make somebody else feel important during the conversation that you're having with them, the likelihood that the conversation is going to kind of go your way is going to increase drastically. And, this is good for business, right? This is definitely in a business mindset. Um, and that's where some of the issues kind of come in, where it's like a lot of these examples that he uses are like business specific examples, sales specific examples, and some of them just don't seem as realistic, let's say, for daily interactions. There was one example in the book he used where he like had this run in with a police officer, like over two different encounters. The first kind of being like the officer was kind of negging him, and the second, the officer was like, more than happy to like let him off with a warning, all because he decided to, kind of just stroke the officer's ego a bit. And, I just don't think that works for everyone. And I mean, right at the end of the book, he does say, like, it's not going to work on everybody, but like if you are able to like incorporate these ideas and, let's say, improve 10% of your interactions, then you're a 10% better leader than you were before, which is a good thing to keep in mind. Like, there are like a lot of big implementations and big changes that one should be making, even if it is, only a fraction better than it was before. Because if you keep doing these things over and over again and implement like new leadership styles and ideas and take the best from all of them, like, right, the 10% becomes 20, becomes 30, and all of a sudden, right, like, what he's trying to say in the book is like you will get, as many sales as you want if you're a salesperson. Your employees, if you're a business owner, will start to respect you and will start to go above and beyond in the workplace because you're making them feel important and, establishing the fact that they have a reputation and that you appreciate them and that you're kind of like building this competitive nature within themselves and within the team to like live up to this high standard. Um, and all of that kind of stems from, a place of like just putting yourselves in their shoes, not getting mad at them, just like thinking about, right, what comes first, which is the fact that they're people and, people make mistakes, right? A different example in the book that they used was like there were these two employees who were like smoking right underneath the no smoking sign. So the boss guy came over, handed them some cigars, and was like, "Hey guys, like I would appreciate it if you smoke these outside." And they did, right? They listened to him after that. And it's like the idea being, it's like if you go into any of these confrontations, any of the examples throughout the book, right? The antithesis being like, if you're going in starting aggressive, people are just going to be aggressive back and they might listen to you in the moment. But chances are, like, once you like walk away or, a day later, a week later, whatever, they're just going to go back to doing what they were doing before, um, which is probably true. So, right, by making these people feel important, even like giving them a gift, and just like, right, not calling them out on the fact that they like clearly broke a rule and clearly fucked up, you know, it was like, hey, like shit happens, just don't let it happen again, and all things are good, right? He didn't even like approach the situation in a manner of calling them out at all or being like, this is a warning. Like, you know, in his head, he might have said that, but the point being, it's like, if you are going into these interactions like this, you're not even going to have to issue any warnings because you are really like treating these people as though they have a say in what goes on in the company, right? Like, and not only that, like you're being sincere, which is like the other big point in this, where it's like showing this gratitude only works if you're actually being sincere. Like, don't be flattering. Like, don't just say good job when you don't really mean it. Like, be specific and be sincere about it. Like it doesn't hurt. It's kind of easy, and I think that's sort of the point where it's like if you just like took a step back and started a conversation, pointing out all the good things and complimenting the person across from you before, bringing in things during that conversation of like things that could be personally improved upon, they're much more likely to see your side of the story. And even so, like, the less you are saying, the better. Like, most of the time, these people will convince themselves to, like, join your side of the argument just because you are willing to, like, hear them out and actually listen and, like, involve them in the plans, right? So it's like, when you're trying to sell someone on something, it's not necessarily like, you don't want to necessarily go in and be like, here are the reasons why you should buy our product ABC, where in like a circumstance you might be able to be like, right, it's basically like, what are you looking for? Like, can you tell us so that way we can like fit your exact needs, right? It's like, one of these examples was a designer where he claimed that he like went 150 times over the past year or two, right? Like once a week or whatever, and this guy turned him away every single time. But the moment he was like, "What do you want to see out of these designs?" and like allowed this person to like actually take a part in the process, he didn't have to be sold; he bought, and that is sort of right the main thing this book is trying to tell everyone is like, you don't necessarily have to sell when you are acting and being and treating others a certain way. All these things will sort of just happen naturally, and that is like a really cool thing. So like the fact that this is, an old book that still stands up is a great thing. Um, and I would definitely recommend reading it. There's more, there is more that you could pull out of this book from like an older text than like a lot of old texts, which seem to not have very much any relevancy in like a modern world. Where as long as you are within like a professional realm, this book is for sure going to help you out. Right. So some of the critiques being like, that being the main one is that it really is just made for like a modern professional business world, and a lot of the time this type of interaction and this type of like the way that like you talk to people normally on the street and in your life, they're not all going to be like these relatively ideal scenarios. Not everybody is going to be like, let's say, as stable as all these interactions in the book were. And like, there are a lot of greedy people, a lot of people are out there to get you. And, not everybody is looking to collaborate and be a team and, lift each other up and that sort of thing. Where it's like, yeah, in this professional world where there's like money involved and you're making business and you're networking and like creating partners and coming from this point of view of like already kind of being in like that type of world, that white collar, like what people these days would call elite world, like that book sort of fits more with people who are in that story and following that narrative. Where it's like if you are blue collar and, let's say mechanic, landscaper, just starting out, right? Like any minimum wage type job, like all of these things are not necessarily going to help you progress like from your minimum wage position like to a higher level executive position in a company. You kind of already have to be there to like for it to make a difference for you. Um, so that is definitely something to keep in mind. But like when you are progressing throughout life, maybe you're not there right now. Like it's definitely something you should pick up if like you're starting to get into those management level positions, or you're starting your own business, or you're becoming a salesperson and want to improve on your skills. Right? There's a lot of utility out there for a lot of people within this book. Um, Highly recommend. And if you have any questions or want to discuss, please leave them down in the comments. I'll try to reach out and respond to as many people as possible. I think that's going to be it for this week. I'm Wild Will. This has been a New Lens Book Club. This week was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And if you have any suggestions, any books you want to see, ask me. I might read them. Maybe I'll review them. Till next week. See you later. Please subscribe.